Hi, my name is Artur, and it probably will surprise you that after first Into the Spider-Verse trailer released on December 11, 2017, some guy wrote in his Facebook, "I have nothing to do with this movie, leave me alone." And he's kinda right. He isn't mentioned in interviews, nor he is a part of a production team. What doesn't add up is that this guy was briefly mentioned in the credits as a visual consultant. The thing is that his name is mentioned, but not in the official version, and all the animators call him art director and are unanimously giving him highest respect for setting the spirit of the future cartoon. This guy's name is Alberto Mielgo, and the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was stolen from him. We used to call Into the Spider-Verse a revolution, but it's a revolution gone wrong. It's a subpar compared to what it could have become. In fact, this story has already received some publicity, and the name of Mielgo is now the talk of the town in the all-fan communities. But it seemed to me that people that are sharing this story haven't actually paid attention to Mielgo's work. And as a matter of fact, have you seen his footage of Spider-Man? I've looked into everything that led to the original art director's work and found the cartoon that we regrettably lost. This is a story about cartoon created at tech labs, misleading PR and standing up to the system, and also how Penny Parker has moved to the Love, Deth and Robots. Because the cartoon that we lost actually was kind of released in 2020. Do you know how big screen cartoons are made? Luckily, we were blessed with the leaks of emails between Sony directors. We are interested in two big directors, Amy Pascal and Doug Belgrand. They were idly texting and throwing ideas like, "Let's rejuvenate the Spider-Man by 2018," or "Let's make some flashy and juicy Spider-Man cartoon," or "Let's text to Arthur, he can make great cartoon," and all that stuff. But the producers Phil Lordum and Christopher Miller was assigned to the project with one clear task: to make something flashy and juicy by December 2018. The first task the producer tackled was to assemble creative lab to find the most avant-garde stuff. They needed an art director who can put together something awesome, and then one of the recruiters was looking through the Hollywood database and came across an interesting profile of a guy named Alberto Mielgo. You remember him, right? Are you feeling where the story goes? So, all you need to know about this guy, once he was asked to draw a few concept arts for the 7th Harry Potter movie. And it was the time when the movie didn't even have a script. In the end, all of his shots made into the movie, and this shot actually inspired a whole scene that wasn't even in the book. This guy even worked for the Cartoon Network. But more importantly, he just won the 2013 Emmy Award for the visually innovative Tron Uprising. What's most important is that he seems to understand comics. He draws some himself and also animated superhero characters for the Oscars. And I especially like his Batman. First time when goofy Batman looks actually cool. But there is one problem in animation. What Pixar and Disney do is extremely successful and has taken over the entire industry, but it has created perception that 3D animation can look only like this. And if you look through Mielgo's work, he tries himself in 2D and 3D. He has pronounced style, high contrast, sharp edges and geometric shapes, vibrant colors and a lot of dynamics, extensive work with the silhouette and movement. His images show some cool elaboration of urban landscapes and skyscrapers. In his personal studio, he was creating concepts of such physical superheroes, and this art from 2010 has nothing to do with the Spider-Man, but I am sure this art gave him job. Here's the thing, the Mielgo spirit was far beyond that. Sony's recruiter absent-mindedly overlooked the another part of Mielgo's works: an oil painting of pornographic actress and Philips advertisement. Something is about to go wrong. So Alberto is literally the first person to walk on a completely empty floor in the Sony office, with no directors or producers. Officially, he was hired on a small contract to create a test animation. The best Hollywood scouts take him to the rooftops with the camera. He does intensive research into everything related to the Spider-Man and dedicates all his time to one simple task: to make something brand new. He is given a full Kate Blanchett and a budget to assemble a dream team. And this team mentioned in the credits as a visual development. Visual development in this case has to come up with the cartoon style and concepts and the technology needed to get the concepts on the screen. This is a big creative and engineering challenge. The Spider-Verse has an incredibly open production process. I have never seen so much material for any cartoon, and so you can track how much original team's work has been put in the final product, checking the social media of the artist. As for Mielgo's legacy, what's really left of it? The main piece of evidence is this test animation of Mielgo himself, which made to the final cut almost unaltered. It's divided into 3 segments. First, a dark trailer about the death of Peter Parker. Interestingly, this version of the storyboard is followed almost frame by the very first Spider-Verse trailer of 2017. And although that teaser is only slightly different from the cartoon in terms of mood, scene and especially technology, many shots have made in the theaters with little or no change. Even at this stage, I feel like it is obvious that our Spaniard deserves to be mentioned in interviews more. The second concept trailer is a wild action cut that tests to the limit of what you can do with the rhyme and goes crazy with the comic segment. The third, in fact, small piece of an action scene which somehow completely lost its spirit as it made into the final film, although it retains the large frame with the protagonist's mask, which is most typical of Mielgo's direction. What else can we spot? I see his style of line work. That's it, the lines on top of the 3D models. Here, for example, the stroke picturing oblique iris was definitely borrowed from him. And get ready. This is Gwen Stacy, and I have a serious question. Which version would be more popular on the Pornhub?
Go to horny jail.
You can find many other intersections with art, a familiar off-Hitler car, lines hanging in the air above the model, and a few more touches typical of his work, like abstract lines just hanging over the city. All concept art is drawn exactly like Alberto's style, a fine balance of hyper detail and abstract imaginary. But perhaps what is more important is not even some specific drawings, but the general idea that Mielgo calls visual impressionism, inspired by oil paintings. So basically, to understand this style, squint your eyes. I'm serious right now. Okay, so what you see right now? Most likely my hair, glasses, beard and shirt. This is enough to recognize me, my silhouette. It was the principle of simplifying while detailing that becomes the driving force in the cartoon's design, which other people later boasted in interviews. In 2015 alone, perhaps the most powerful creative team on the planet, led by Alberto, created the following: the first character concepts and techniques for working with space, impressive animatics and 3 different moods of the cartoon, and almost all of it has made into the final cut. Furthermore, Alberto also came up with the posters and movie logo. Under his watchful guidance, the team has created 4 absolutely delightful test shots. And then one morning, Alberto was fired for no defining reason. He didn't know why he was fired, and he didn't know who was behind that decision. He packed his bags, blocked his employer on Facebook and wrote this: I had to quit all my artists, all my works, leave educational materials and ideas behind. If you're an artist, you can imagine what it feels like. The day the trailer released, Alberto wrote that he has nothing to do with it. But when cartoon released, Mielgo was getting more and more respect on social media for creating the basis of future cartoon. Spider-Verse wins Golden Globe. It was a great segment to name bunch of names that were involved into creation of Spider-Verse, but no one mentions Spaniard. Alberto writes a post on his personal blog telling the story without pointing fingers. He apologizes for Facebook bombing and reminds all sympathizers to avoid insinuating other authors. When I was kicked out, the rest of the team had a whole film to make. The post ends with the phrase, even though I think I have a pretty sweet mention in the book, maybe no, I'm not sure. The 25-page art book consists of Alberto's concepts. His name is not to be found anywhere. The reason behind the mysterious visual consultant title and why Sony directors and producers don't advertise my work is not good or bad, honest or dishonest. It's a problem that comes with a shitty lawyer. So this was a story of a poor artist being fired by a big corporation, and thank God that he was fired, because it saved the Spider-Man cartoon at the very last moment. After all, the dude made a technological and stylistic revolution where it was so uncalled for it. You must understand one thing that reviewers and video essay creators on YouTube do not know. Far from always doing something breakthrough, something to the maximum and the highest quality is a good thing. Avant-garde things will be appreciated first of all by the professionals, not by reviewers or average viewers. Often people do not understand what the breakthrough is. Therefore, many great works that moved genre forward bombed in the box office and wasn't appreciated and accepted by society. To understand my point and understand why am I right, we need to see the whole picture. So let's talk about Into the Spider-Verse and why it is not a revolution or innovative cartoon. Spider-Verse is very different from other theatrical releases, but most of the tricks that made the audience go nuts have been around for many years. You just didn't notice them. A 3D animated pencil, splitting a picture into a halftones, combining different styles, every eye-catching trick can be easily tracked. Line work was developed by Pixar in its short animated films. Reduced frame rate for 3D object was in a Gorillaz video. Let me show you this clip by KDA to really drive my point home. I should also remind you about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles used lines, comic bubbles and combination of different art styles in one cartoon in 2010. What Sony came up with caused a complete perception shift in the eyes of regular viewers. Sony's main achievement is in fact in collecting this already researched stylistic stack and bringing it to the big screen. When the wide audience said, "Oh my god, no one has been done this before, this is unbelievable," the professionals just said, Finally, someone brought this visual style to the mainstream. I was always interested in animation since childhood. I even created a device for rotoscope myself. Then I switched to the digital and burned 3 hard drives with 2 short animated cartoons. I remember the times when I was running around different studios offering my project with similar visual styles and animation. But it was because of that everyone refused to work with me. So why then so much talk about Spider-Verse? It all comes down to the marketing, sir. Or means depends on who watches. Sony realized how people reacted to the end product and that critics are for the most part unanimous with viewers who don't understand anything. So they began a full-blown advertisement campaign, inflating this revolution bubble that was in fact misleading. It's called Oscar bait. If you need some talking heads that brag about their work, you need everyone whose name came up to be ready to give the right interview. This, in part, is the reason why Mielgo person non grata. Because while he worked for Sony, he was doing something completely different. Everyone always missed the main point of this story. The dude was fired after a scandal. So why he was fired? Mielgo was hired to build a lab, explore possibilities and create an animation revolution, but something went wrong. As a result, the big screen shows a caution, evolutionary process well within what it expected in the industry. I personally think that Mielgo was too professional. The guy took the task too far. And in the end, the only thing that went into the cartoon is one frame. And you can see how strikingly different it is from the rest of cartoon. The test animatics he was hired for was never finished. He had only 4 frames. Compared to the final renders of the same scene, they look at least kinda dull, don't you think? And everyone seems to ignore Mielgo's words about the story.
It was a little bit less cartoony and a bit more realistic. A more realistic version basement. These are like a little bit more realistic. I think you're noticing a pattern here.
Judging by Alberto's portfolio from a decade ago, he tried out everything at the start of his career. He has bright and elegant works, but we are in the timeline when the second side of his work took over. As he progressed in his career, the more non-mainstream side of things took over. The second part of the story begins in a Facebook post, November 24, 2015. I watched Zootopia and really liked it, but it is not good news for animation. It means that it will be dominated by fucking animals for another decade, and that means it's time for me to start working on something else. Based on the data, it was exactly that moment when he started working hard on Into the Spider-Verse.
I mean, animation nowadays is really fucked up. What's wrong with animation nowadays? I mean, it's what is all this shit about? Like, I cannot stand any more animal talking.
And actually, he didn't like everything about the script. This is how he was talking about the pitch while he was still working.
And then in the third act, he saved the kingdom of the cows and the world. And then you go back home feeling like shit because you need to pay your rent, and this love just saved the world. You know, like, no more animal talkings, no more fucking heroes.
Even at design level, Mielgo doesn't share the value of traditional heroic myth and leans towards relatable stories about real people with human problems, and he dragged this realism into the cartoon. Consider a slightly more realistic version of the Spider-Base. Realistic. I feel like you can see the pattern that merging here. By the way, his view on Spider-Man is very similar to this David Fincher one with Edward Norton in the main role. What? You did not know that? Yes, in the 90s we could get a dark, depressed version of Spider-Man from creator of Fight Club. If you're interested in this story, hit the like and write a comment. Back to Alberto. He is very comfortable with human anatomy, and his Instagram is filled with our body's mundane, realistic imperfections. In his own words, his concept of Spider-Man is body type that real climbers should have. He created 3 trailers with different undertones, but they all share the same realistic vision. This isn't a modern skinny spider, this is a heavy, overweight and slightly awkward carcass. The task was to target the young audience with that cartoon, but those plastics were closer to the Spider-Man of the 90s. Because Mielgo's works are based on the real shots of people, he literally brought the same vision he had 10 years ago. He constantly plays with focus and exposure jumps. His composition is often disrupted when most of the frame is something that no one can make sense of, and there is virtually no animation plastics. Alberto himself said, "I think I use more live action and cinema in general than animation per se." He likes to go one step further than obvious solution. Morales looks either a badass punk or a real kid. He absolutely screwed up Gwen Stacy and Penny Parker, which by the way is drawn in the same way as the rest of the characters. I don't find the very idea of mixing styles in the concepts of Mielgo's era, but this art, well, this is out of line. Mielgo said, "Now, after a while, I think my Spider-Man was generally overly aggressive. But there was one important thing left, the technological pipeline. That's it, the innovative filming process that the lab has created for the cartoon. I found that he was mentioned only once in a public interview, and everything became clear with the way they were mentioning him. Director Bob Pericetti said in the interview with a specialized animation website, Alberto Mielgo was one of our few super early painters designers, and he was a big proponent of I don't want to build 3D sets, let's just paint all the backgrounds. And that's fantastic, but we can't make a feature like that, but that's the spirit that this movie needed to have. He advocated hand-drawn each frame in the 3D cartoon.
It's definitely all about sharing information and kind of coming to an agreement about which direction you're going to go in. And you know you have to do that to get the project made.
Mielgo's vision neither fits this cartoon in terms of narrative and visual, neither in terms of technology. When I was younger, I was working on a 2D cartoon with 3D skeleton, where the selling point was to realistically recreate all the body part, joints, muscles, bone, things, etc. If you ever made an animation yourself, you know what a pain in the ass it would be. We made only 10 or 15 seconds, it looked unbelievable, especially in action scenes, but it's just unrealistic to make even a short film. The producers need an innovative, but still high-grossing mainstream cartoon, and they needed an efficient, productive chain. I think it's a very scary thing for the studio to see how long it takes to complete one shot. Our guys out of this universe vision obviously influenced the whole team.
Alberto was the guy that everybody was trying to emulate, I guess, and we were all being absorbed into his style.
In a year and a half, he made a big technological breakthrough that fully reflected his vision. His visual demos are clearly unique, but they are not kind of things that can be sold in McDonald's. Just imagine the situation. You have 2 years left until the release of cartoon. The test animatics is far from what you expected and far from what you have seen on Twitter. The team who was absolutely inspired by this dude's vision.
This painting got turned into the actual animation test. That one of the scary things for the studio, seeing the amount of time it took to take a shot, a little bit scary for them to see that it took a few months to do.
Here is the quote. Alberto was the guy that everyone was trying to copy. We were obsessed with his style. I think Post took over Patrick O'Keefe, who took the lead and started looking for a family-friendly Spider-Verse, one that didn't remind of backyard punks.
Yes, so I came on as a visual development artist. There was a bit of a regime change, which I'm sure people are learning about as more and more artists talk about what happened.
Are we talking about Alberto Mielgo?
Yes, and just his and anybody who worked on pre-production, and you can't understate the importance of the work that was done by the early development artists. It was the foundation in which we ended up standing on, and it was rock solid.
The first one came up with lots of creative stuff, and the second one gave it the needed direction. But redirecting has greatly affected pre-production, because the year ago the team had no idea how would city look in the daytime. Remember, the first trailer came out in 2017, and it follows the Mielgo storyboard because nothing else really happened there. But this scene is far from the whole other script. Same shot at different stages. Peter is chasing Prowler, Miles is chasing Prowler, and Peter is just dying in the opening cutscene. It was the same scene when he tells how he always saves New York, but in fact he's fighting against the backdrop of Collider from the following scene. And by the way, that's how this scene's supposed to look according to Mielgo. In short, knowing that 6 months before the release the third act was completely rewritten, trying to fit the new lines into the already animated frames, the fact that Spider-Verse came out alright is an absolute miracle. When the production process becomes as chaotic as this, even the great ones as a Pixar with The Good Dinosaur fail. Yes, firing Alberto went some asshole-ish way. But my opinion is that Spider-Verse came out exactly as it should have. It would never have become so hype in the hands of Mielgo, but I want to look into the real technological revolution, the one which is hidden from our eyes, and whose developments Alberto took out of the studio. What was there that would revolutionize the world of animation? Well, he created his own short film after the Spider-Man. But this is a small cartoon virtually without a budget, where one can find very similar shots. Thanks to those shots you can track the very Mielgo style in the Spider-Man. On December 19, Alberto wrote his first post explaining the whole spider situation. On January 2nd he wrote his second post with concepts and explaining his vision. And a week later, the almanac Deth and Robots was released. He fully owns the third episode of the series, The Witness. I don't know about you, but of all 18 episodes, me and my friends were the most excited about The Witness. The incredible art direction, images are mind-blowing. And look at the animation of clothes, it's just incredible! How is this possible? We haven't really seen anything like it. Is all of this really three-dimensional, or how about rotoscoping? This is more 2D cartoons than Beauty and the Beast. Yes, there's a combination of different techniques, but fundamentally everything boils down to 101 Dalmatians and simple K-frame animation. 90% of those frames are hand-drawn backgrounds, and 3D was used only in few heavy shots. But even if the backdrop was 3D, the characters were still drawn frame by frame on top of it, and the clothes were superimposed on top. They came up with previously non-existent way to animate clothing through a program called Marvelous Designs, which does not seem to be made for movies at all. 80% of what you see is painting, and other 20 on top are reflection, shadow and minor layer enhancement. And the author said those jumps in exposure, as if camera is adjusting to the change in lighting, were made by twisting the knobs in Adobe After Effects. The Witness is an absolute celebration of everything that Mielgo has been doing through many years. This is a story without heroic narrative, and it's about regular people. And this is not a joke about time loop, but essential and personal metaphor for toxic relationship, where romantic parents take turn being a victim. This is what his style has become, more like cinema than animation, realistic proportion with proper respect for human anatomy. Once upon a time he turned out to not be what the producers of Spider-Man were looking for, and that is okay. But now he took the same studio and did exactly the same thing that banned him from big corporations. There, the producer grabbed their heads and said, "Dude, this is not how the business process is built. We cannot draw every frame." Yes, you can. It's just a lot of hard work that takes a while. But you can. A 2-hour Spider-Verse was drawn in 2.5 hours, and it took a year to make it 10 minutes of Witness. People were trying to understand, what the hell? Who did it? As I look on the Facebook, googled Mielgo's previous works and found a recent series of posts. And it was exactly at that moment where the story about stealing Spider-Man went viral. The journalists wrote headlines, a witness from the art director of Spider-Man. PR start to work the other way. Remember, we started with an Emmy for The Throne, and now Deth and Robots received 5, 3 of them which belonged to Witness. Sony could no longer deny anything. The ban from the name of our Spaniard has gradually been lifted. So in 2020, for the first time, the producer wrote a direct tweet saying, "Yes, we worked with this dude, and everything seemed to be fine. Everyone reconciled, but a small scar still remained. But it healed on July 12, 2020, when the Watch Dogs Legion trailer came out. The tipping point. The press already knew how to write the headlines. This is a full-blown sensation on steroids from the same dude. To understand that, those are real Spider-Man concepts. Yes, one can see some bits and pieces of his work for the Beatles. The dude lived in London, and characters matching movement are a coincidence, but a highly plastic character who draws graffiti, verbatim quoting of the shot in Subway and the color of the subway itself coincidence with his early concepts. Okay, the scene against the backdrop of huge display are his own thing, but the whole big action scene, the highway, is definitely pre-production from the Spider-Verse. I am 100% sure the tipping point has become something more than just an inside message for the colleague, but a confession of a great artist. This is what Alberto Mielgo's Spider-Man would be like. In new season of Love, Deth and Robots, Alberto Mielgo's style evolved even more. The last work might be his best, at least in visual department. Write a comment which one is your favorite, but I have one request for you, Alberto. Text me, let's collaborate. I have an unbelievable script that will blow away everyone's mind, and my directing style is similar to yours. And if you like this video, hit the like, subscribe, write a comment, and if you want more content from me right now, you can visit my Patreon, and if you want to help with the victims of war in Ukraine, all the links will be in the description and pinned